Need to go to live stream first.
Media's coming in now. We're going to turn on the live stream.
Yeah. Where do we see you?
Thank you to everyone for joining us today. The media that are joining us right now, if you could kindly mute yourselves, mute your microphones, and we can get started. Just gonna wait for the rest of the media who are arriving to go ahead and mute their microphones. And then our DA can start.
You just tell me when I'm ready to roll, Rochelle.
Okay. Good to go.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Anne Marie Schubert, and I have the honor of being the District Attorney for Sacramento County. I appreciate everyone that has joined us today, both the media as well as a number of elected district attorneys from across California, as well as a representative from MAD, Rhonda Campbell. Let me just start by saying this. Over the last several months, if not over the last year, many public safety officials across California, law enforcement, elected district attorneys, and others have been sounding the alarm about a number of public safety issues that we all are facing here in California. There has been an extraordinary amount of coverage on such things as the rising homicide rates, the rising rates of violent crime, the EDD fraud, illegal guns on our streets, and as we all know recently, the number of thefts and smash and grab robberies that are occurring in many jurisdictions across California. But we're here today because it's become apparent to many of us in law enforcement that we are also sounding the alarm on a significant increase in the number of DUI fatalities that are occurring on the streets of our state. And so today we have brought together a number of elected district attorneys from across different areas of California, as well as Rhonda Campbell from MAD. So I'm going to introduce the folks. I'll start it off with what we're seeing here in Sacramento, and then I will be asking other folks, district attorneys and Rhonda, to also be telling us kind of their experience. So let me just start by talking a little bit about, let me give you the introductions. First of all, we have from Yolo County, we have Assistant District Attorney Melinda Aiello. From El Dorado County, we have District Attorney Vern Pearson. From Placer County, we have District Attorney Morgan Geyer. Fresno County District Attorney Lisa Smitkamp. Kern County District Attorney Cindy Zimmer. San Diego District Attorney Summer Steffen. And we will round out today's media coverage with Rhonda Campbell from MAD to kind of talk about what are the realities of this and what can we do for resources. We decided to do this because we have seen significant increases in these fatalities. And as we enter into the holiday season, we are particularly concerned about the level of DUI fatalities that we're seeing on the streets of our community. So if I can just ask our folks to kind of show what we're seeing here in Sacramento and why we are particularly concerned, and we want the public to be aware of this, particularly going into this season. If you can help us out, Rochelle, with that sharing of the screen. So when we started to dive into the data, and I will, first off, I will also acknowledge that Summer Steffen from San Diego started seeing this trend in her county, and she put out information several months ago about this. And that really prompted me and many others to start looking at what are we seeing here in our own county. And this is particularly concerning because, and this chart really demonstrates what we're seeing in terms of fatalities. So when we say vehicular manslaughter cases involving intoxications, there's at least two different types of charges that we can file. And these represent the cases that we have filed. So on average, if you look from 2017 to 2020, we had between 9 and 12 cases that we would file in any given year. And since 2021, really January 2021 until now, really actually a couple of weeks ago, we have seen 125% increase in the number of cases we have filed. This is 125%.
What did it say before? I forgot what the question was earlier,
I
but
didn't ask you any
Oh, so-
questions before.
I'm
You were
sorry,
just
somebody-
speaking.
oh
somebody's
no,
not
when you
gonna
said
make
that you
themselves-
didn't want to live, I'm just saying that at the time I didn't care. I'd never done that,
Let's
and it's just I was
Is
in the
there somebody
impression
else
that
that-
the insurance was still being able to cover the car.
Can you guys still hear me? Okay, I don't know what happened there with that. Rochelle, can we go back to that slide? I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I don't know where that sound came from, but
Yes, thanks, Emery.
okay, so what is really concerning for us here in Sacramento County is the significant increase in the number of vehicular manslaughter cases where we're talking about DUI fatalities, where people have lost their lives in Sacramento County. Maybe you can show the next one then, please. And when we reached out to our law enforcement partners, Sacramento Police Department, as well as CHP, we also are seeing the number of traffic fatalities. And these may not be involving alcohol, but if you look at the city of Sacramento, the number of fatalities has increased 33% between 2019 and 2020. That is a significant increase. And our California Highway Patrol has also reported a 15% statewide increase in traffic fatalities. So these are something that are very concerning to us. And at the end of the day, I think when we talk about fatalities, we have to talk about the fact that these are human beings that have lost their lives. And to give you one example here from Sacramento, and I will say this is a pending case, but last summer we had a gentleman, 76-year-old Mike Dodson, who was out riding his bicycle on the American River Pike Parkway with his club of bicyclists. And an individual who is now stands accused of murder and gross vehicular manslaughter drove his vehicle up on the parkway and hit Mr. Dodson, who within 3 weeks died of those injuries. And that person that is now charged is pending murder charges. He's charged with gross vehicular manslaughter involving intoxication. He's also charged with driving on a revoked license. So I think it's critically important that folks understand that these are human beings. And as we enter into this holiday season, there's perhaps no greater message than to understand the dangers that we face and the importance of refraining from drinking and driving, not just at any time, but these holiday season. So with that, I will turn it over to Melinda Aiello from Yolo County to give her perspective.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. Good afternoon, everyone. It is an honor to be here representing the Yolo County DA's office on behalf of Jeff Reisig. Yolo County has a population of approximately 217,000 people. We are on the low end of a medium-sized county in California. But like other counties, we have seen an increase in our DUI fatalities this year as compared to the previous 4 years. Our first slide shows an overview of the last 5 years. And as you can see, in 2017, we had 2, in 2018, 0, 19, 2, 1 in 2020, and this notable increase in 2021. If we could go to the next slide, you can see the more specific breakdown between the two types of vehicular manslaughters involving intoxication, those with gross negligence shown in blue and those without gross negligence shown in the green. The number of vehicular manslaughters has more than doubled, comparing 2021 with the individual years of 2017 to 2020. This year's increase is dramatic and noticeable, even for a county of Yolo's size. These 5 cases of vehicular manslaughter while intoxicated highlights what's been going on statewide and demonstrates the need for this outreach campaign. It's also worth mentioning that of one of these 5 cases, there were 2 lives lost in the same traffic fatality. While these numbers may not seem to be extreme compared to larger counties, that doesn't mean anything to a victim's family. And as prosecutors, we have all had those conversations with those family members, and knowing the devastating loss and impact that this has not only on a community, but on a family itself. The Yolo County DA's office is in our 10th year of receiving grant funding from the Office of Traffic Safety. And that funding goes towards outreach programs, training, and specialized prosecution. We have dedicated attorneys who handle these cases and know how to do them right. As a result of the rise in DUI fatalities, coupled with the increase in DUI fatalities during the holiday season, our local law enforcement is enhancing its outreach methods and also conducting greater enforcement. There have been DUI checkpoints held with anticipated more checkpoints and increased patrol staffing. We join with MAD and our law enforcement agencies in supporting the efforts of the 35th anniversary of MAD's Tie One On for Safety campaign. Let's celebrate safely and either use a designated driver or drive sober. DUI fatalities are 100% avoidable and presentable. And with that, I would like to turn this over to DA Vern Pearson.
Thank you. And thank you, Anne Marie, and my fellow DAs, as well as Rhonda from MAD, and all the members of the media for being here to talk about this very important topic to all of us and to all of you and to all of California. El Dorado County has particularly dangerous roads. In fact, our CHP partners regard El Dorado County as having some of the most dangerous roads in the state of California. And if you can pull up the slide, you can see some of what we're talking about. This is going back historically back to 2019, 2020 to 2021. We have a lot of crashes from people driving high rates of speed. But as far as the impaired driving, our numbers went from 2019, they dropped a little bit and then have bumped back up to higher than the 2019 number. And I would say that this is in spite of a significant amount of effort on the part of local law enforcement, on part of the DA's office, and in particular the California Highway Patrol's efforts to do maximum enforcement and bring those numbers down. We're still seeing the same types of trends that's taken place throughout the state of California, of going dead as a result of, in 2020, result of DUIs from 7 up to double to 14 this year in a county of less than 200,000. So these are really dramatic numbers, and they, as indicated before, when we say that, we're talking about numbers, but these are real people that, not a statistic, that have lost their lives due to someone driving in a reckless and impaired way. And with that, I would turn it over to the next, actually, I think is it Lisa as the next speaker?
It's Morgan Geyer from Placer
I'm sorry,
County.
Morgan.
Thank you, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, and thank my colleagues for joining, and Rhonda from MAD. Our numbers are frighteningly and sadly very similar. We have already seen in 2021 numbers that increase, are more increased than our 2020 numbers and our 2019 numbers. Thanksgiving weekend was a particularly sad weekend for our county, having 2 in the same day and 1 in our neighboring county in Nevada County. As District Attorney Vern Pearson said, the roads in our counties in both Placer and El Dorado get particularly snowy. We see a lot of celebratory traffic of people heading up to the mountains to have fun, and with that comes more impaired driving. Our hearts break with these cases. These are cases from a prosecutor's standpoint that you remember more than others, and they really leave a lasting impression. And we have cried with our surviving victims' family members. We have advocated for them in court, and we will continue to do all we can outside of the courtroom to get this message out there. And if I could have our slides, I wanted to show just a little bit of what we were doing here in Placer. We have partnered with MAD and Crime Victims United to create sort of a billboard campaign as part of our Friends Don't Let Friends DUI campaign. And these are hanging in the restrooms of local bars and restaurants in Placer County. And our restaurant and bar owners have issued a restaurant challenge to nearby restaurants to see how many of these posters and billboards can be hanging in the nearby restaurants and bars in our community. And when they are in there, you will see a QR code for Uber that can be scanned directly from your phone inside. So these are some of the things that myself and a lot of our colleagues throughout the state are doing to try and get the message out and to try and reduce the number of lives that are lost, because these are, as our colleagues have said, these are 100% preventable. With a little bit of education and some reinforcement, we can bring these numbers down and not have to have those difficult conversations with our victims and surviving family members. And with that, I will turn it over to our next speaker, District Attorney Lisa Smith-Camp.
Thank you so much. Am I unmuted? There we go. Thank you so much, Morgan. We are seeing the same trends here in Fresno, and sadly, we've been seeing them for 2 years. Over 2020 and 2021, we've seen a significant increase in not only the number of voluntary manslaughter cases vehicular manslaughter cases that we're filing, but also DUI deaths. And we're also seeing a significant number of repeat offenders. Our repeat offenders have gone up almost 100%. People who have previously been arrested or convicted of DUI who are then drinking and driving again. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that with COVID and the quarantine spaces that are needed in local jails, people are not being incarcerated and they are not getting the help that they need, and they are repeating the behavior. So, I think today a lot of people are giving stats of what's happening in their counties. Suffice it to say, very similar things are happening in Fresno, but I would like to challenge people who are seeing this press conference today to really take some accountability and responsibility, not just people who are going to drink alcohol during these holidays and this holiday season, but everybody who is around other people who are drinking alcohol. Not only do we have to be responsible drivers, but we have to be responsible friends, responsible family members, and really grab the keys, because everybody thinks that they're a rock star. Everybody thinks that they're invincible when they drink alcohol. It's just simply the effects of the alcohol on our bodies. And so we really have to intervene sometimes. And sadly, another ripple effect of the COVID crisis all over the state has been that there are less and less Ubers and Lyfts and other types of sober rides available for people. So sometimes even people who are wanting to get a Lyft or an Uber can't find one, especially in smaller locations. So really plan out and take accountability and responsibility with regard to your drinking and driving. And if you see something, say something. Don't be afraid to intervene. And everybody have safe holidays.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Lisa.
Pass it on to whoever is next.
Cindy Zimmer from Kern County.
Hi, my name's Cindy Zimmer. I'm the district attorney in Kern County, which is a county of about 900,000 people located in the southern end of the San Joaquin Valley. In 2021, I filed twice as many DUI fatality cases as I did in 2020. 11 people tragically lost their lives in 2020, but 26 victims died at the hands of DUI drivers in 2021. It's not just because of COVID that we've seen this increase, although I think that is a significant factor. Every year, the California legislature does pass new laws that benefit criminals. And after a decade of pro-crime policies, predictably, more innocent lives are lost, including those at the hands of impaired drivers. Recently, the legislature passed a law that allows diversion for misdemeanor DUI offenses, which will mean that there will not be a conviction and no increased penalty for repeat offenders. But those convicted of DUI deaths, including second-degree Watson murders and voluntary manslaughter cases, which it's very likely that life terms will be imposed, are also likely to be released early by a lenient parole board. People know this. Recently, I was at the crime scene of 2 children that were run down by an impaired driver. And as I stood there with the grieving family members on the street and tried to assure one of the parents that we would do everything possible to seek justice for the death of his children, he said, "What difference would it make? Because the governor's just going to let the killer out anyway." I want to assure the public that the Kern County District Attorney's Office is continuing to aggressively prosecute, but we also want to call upon the public to please refrain from driving under the influence of alcohol, under the influence of marijuana, or under the influence of drugs. Please, we hope that all Californians have a safe and happy holiday. Thank you, and I'd like to turn it over to San Diego County District Attorney Summer Stefan.
Hello, I'm Summer Stefan, San Diego County's District Attorney, and I want to thank Sacramento District Attorney Anne Marie Schubert and her staff for putting this statewide media availability summit together. It's very important because we need the media, and I so appreciate seeing you here. We need you to help us stop this deadly trend that we are seeing. We know that your voice is heard and that you have a way to reach into people's homes and get the message to them, and we need your help in doing that. I want to thank Rhonda Campbell for being heroic and always showing up and saving lives by showing up. So I want to give you a little bit about what's happening in San Diego County, and to give you perspective, San Diego County is the second largest county in the state of California. We serve 3.3 million people, and so we're a very large county. Our focus has always been to fight DUI deaths, but this year and last year, the battle has become really, really difficult, and it is trending in the wrong way. So as just to give you a perspective, this year we had the most DUI deaths than we've seen in the last 20 years since we started to record DUI deaths. We have had 37 lives lost by DUI drivers and drug impaired drivers. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. We noticed this trend beginning last year in 2020, which coincides with COVID. So we have to assume there is something to the connection there, where our numbers jumped from 16 DUI deaths in 2019 to 33 DUI deaths in 2020. And we're at 37 now. So this is more than 100% increase. To give you a perspective, over the last 20 years, we've averaged 15 to 20 DUI deaths annually. And we've kept that number steady, which is, of course, as we all understand, one too many. But to see this number skyrocket to 33 last year, 2020, and 37 this year is really a horrible, horrible thing. And seeing the devastation to families and to our community is actually so heartbreaking, because this is preventable. We also saw that the average blood alcohol levels are higher than ever, at an average of about 0.18%. And when we don't see that high blood alcohol level, in over 50% of the cases, we see a combination of drugs and alcohol. And I have to tell you that while this is not talked about much, that we started to track the drugs where the person's blood alcohol level doesn't look like it matches the level of impairment. And especially with younger DUI drivers that cause death, those numbers are showing, those tests are showing a combination of marijuana and alcohol. So the combination is deadly. We're also seeing prescription drugs, Valium, and other drugs combined with alcohol also produce much higher level of impairment. So that is really the statistics that we're seeing. So we sounded the alarm in October when we saw these trends. We worked with MAD and continue to fight this deadly trend, but it feels like we're in a time that we have suspended reality, where the rules don't seem to apply, where people just have lost track of their connections, whether it's school, daily work, their families. in a way that we are seeing these upticks in crime and also in DUI deaths, which is what we're here to talk about. And before the holidays, we need to stop this trend. We need to be able to look at each other and be our brother's keeper, our sister's keeper, to take note of these data points that we just can't be questioned. They're real, they're hard data, they're coming from multiple counties, multiple district attorneys, which is a rare thing for us in our busy lives to come together to sound the alarm, but we are sounding it in order to save one more life. And I think Rhonda is going to close us out.
Thank you so much. DA Schubert, I can't thank you enough for not only having me attend this meeting, but bringing light to this very, very serious crime of DUI. And I always make sure I use the word crime because I feel like in the mainstream, sometimes DUI isn't considered a crime and it's an absolute crime. And my job at MAD, one of the words we use a lot is hope. A hope for a future of no more victims. That's kind of MAD's tagline. I wish that everybody in my organization and every victim I work with could hear your words today. And I hope that some do, because just hearing you all have the commitment to stepping in and fighting and helping us achieve our goal of no more victims gives me hope. So thank you all for your kind words and your input and your efforts, because it is going to take all of us to make a change. I'd like to talk to you from two angles today. I'm not only a victim advocate for Mothers Against Drunk Driving, but in 1981, when I was 15 years old, my 12-year-old sister was killed by a drunk driver. And 41 years later, you know, it's not any easier. And I was just talking to someone on the phone today, and I was telling them how, you know, Christmas this year, 41 years later, and my mom's struggling. You know, we have a nice life, we have a good family, but we're missing someone. And that pain never goes away. My sister was killed in the summer of 1981. She was riding in the car with a family friend when a 4-time repeat offender ran a stop sign and hit the car they were riding in head on. He didn't have a valid driver's license for previous offenses. He later blew a .16, and in that crash, he killed 2 people. He killed my best friend's mother, and my sister passed 24 hours after the crash. Some of the things that are hard for my family about that particular scene is the drunk driver had very little to no injuries, but yet he didn't offer aid or try to render aid to save my sister or help her or assist her in any way. She laid on the road at 12 years old by herself dying. My parents got the call to go to the hospital. They had to identify my sister by the shoes she was wearing. She was so injured that she was not recognizable at that point in time. They had to give my parents a death notification right there in the hospital. And at that point in time, I wasn't home. I didn't know what was going on. When I was taken back home the next morning, and my parents greeted me at the door, and I knew something was wrong right away, it leads into a series of things that I'd like to share with you that have stuck with me for all of these years and that are horrible, haunting memories. The first being my dad and mom sitting me down on the couch and saying, "We have really bad news. Your baby sister and Joyce were both killed by a drunk driver last night." My dad that morning cried at my feet. I don't think I'd ever seen my daddy cry like that. And I know I have not ever seen him cry like that since then. You don't forget that. We buried Irene on a Saturday. There were over 400 people at her funeral. When the funeral services were over and they escorted everybody except the family out, we were given a few minutes to say our final goodbyes. When they came in and closed the casket that morning, I will never forget the gut-wrenching scream that came out of my mother's mouth that day. It's the most horrid, scary sound I've ever heard in my life. And when I tell people this story, it comes back to me every single time. As I work with Matt as a victim advocate, and I will let you know that with the exception of maybe one of you, I service victims in every single one of your counties. Unfortunately, this time of year, my phone doesn't stop ringing. I'm getting new victims every single day. one of the things that's going to stick with me forever is just recently I was in court sitting behind a mother whose son was killed by a drunk driver. When the judge imposed a sentence of 4 months, 4 months, I will never, ever, ever forget sitting behind that mom and having her look over to her mom and say, 4 months for killing my son? That is something that's never going to leave me. That is why I do what I do. And I know that is why you all do what you do. It's very, very clear to me. We have a lot of work to do. I talk to families every single day who are impacted by drunk driving in one way or another, whether it be an injury or a death. And I can tell you that their stories are the same. Why? Why are they out of jail? Why are they giving leniency? Why are we not doing something? And I wish that I could show them that there are a big gang of us out here really trying to do something. And I know that if we keep working together and we keep up these efforts, that we will eventually see a day when we have no more victims and we are making a difference and we are prosecuting these people for the crime that they are committing. So thank you all for your dedication to that. I'd also like to share with you just a few tips about how to avoid getting yourself in that situation, not only during the holidays, but anytime. As a couple of you pointed out, a DUI, boy, the best odds in the world, 100% preventable, 100% of the time. If we could get those odds on every other crime in our country, wouldn't that be great? 100% of the time. So what are some ways we can avoid it? A designated driver. Right now, MAD has their red ribbon, their Tie One On for Safety campaign to get a designated driver. What I would say to that is a designated driver is not the least intoxicated person in your group. A designated driver is a non-drinking driver, very important. Plan your designated drivers before your evening begins or your party, whatever it is you're doing, plan that ahead of time. Pick someone who's dedicated to staying sober for the night. That way you all get a safe ride home. Uber. Now, I know some of you said Uber is not available in your communities, and I know in DA Geyer's community, the city of Auburn has come together and they've actually put together a public transit that's kind of like Uber because of the lack of availability. That's a possibility for everybody. All it takes is somebody opening the door and putting the option out there, making it happen. So Uber, public transportation, very oftentimes when somebody's stopped and they've been drinking, they'll say, what have you been doing tonight? Well, I was at a party at a friend's house. So if you're hosting a party, be a good friend this year. Ask ahead of time if everybody has a designated driver before they come to your party. Provide plenty of snacks. Provide some non-alcoholic options on your drink list. Be aware, see what's going on, take the keys, offer people to spend the night. And you know, a misconception about drinking is that coffee or food or something else can sober you up. That's not true. Nothing will sober you up except time. So don't offer your guests a cup of coffee and send them out the door they're still intoxicated. So I think if we as a community become more aware of what's happening around us and aren't afraid to step in or aren't afraid to say, stop, or let me help, or let me call. If we can do that as a community, I think we'll see some big changes. So my challenge would be, you know, everybody during this holiday season, I wish you all a very, very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. My challenge is be the person who steps up to do the right thing, make the calls, take the keys, make plans, plan ahead of time. You know, the lives you save are precious to somebody, and it means a whole lot. So thank you all for having me. I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you. We are now going to start the Q&A session. I'm going to start off with channel 13 from Sacramento. And the question is, why are DUIs going up? And didn't we see a reduction in DUI arrests following the rise of Uber and Lyft? Speaker. And if we could have the panel take this question.
I can start off. I'm sure other folks have their own perspective, but you know, listen, we've been facing a very difficult time for the last almost 2 years now. I think we've all seen there's been a rise in mental health issues. There's been rise in, you know, concerns for folks. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we're seeing increased DUI and fatalities. And I'd be curious on what my other colleagues see, but we cannot deny the statistics. I mean, I would agree that you would expect with Uber and Lyft. Yeah, I suspect at the time that it began, but pre-COVID. But what we're seeing since COVID is this really rapid increase.
I would make a comment to add to that. In this Summer, DA Summer Stephan alluded to this, and that in many respects, I too feel like we're living in an altered universe. Over the last few years, increasingly, we have politicians and public figures that are encouraging a culture of lawlessness. We see if you fly, you see people aggressive with flight attendants. If you get out on the highway, you see people driving at extremely high rates of speed that were not occurring over the last, prior to the last couple of years. I think it is fair to say that defund the police, the war on police as a entity that's been going on over the last few years, it's all part of it. This isn't one single cause that's individually causing that. It's the collective of all of those different types of things, and a perspective that you can go steal other people's property if you choose to. We're all seeing that. It's all part of the same thing, and we all need to do something about it.
It's a
Okay, anybody else? Otherwise, we'll go on to the next question. So the next question is from Maria Cortez with Univision from Fresno. What are some of the consequences of a DUI, and what is the cost of a DUI? I don't know.
So I can take that. In Fresno County, the consequences of a first-time DUI is that you're put on probation, and if this is assuming that it's a misdemeanor and there's no injuries, you have to take a first offender DUI class. Your license is suspended. You are given fines over $1,000, and oftentimes you have to do community service. If there is injury and there is a felony, depending on the level of injury, you could do some significant jail time. Oftentimes, the first time that you're out with a felony, you could get 180 days in jail. And if you injure or kill someone with great bodily injury, then of course the punishment goes up. There is also a law in California that called the Watson Advisement. And if you are convicted of drunk driving, at the time you're convicted, whether it's a misdemeanor, felony, whether there's injury or no injury, you are given a warning by the court that says that drunk driving is inherently dangerous to human life. And that if you are subsequently involved in drinking and driving again, where someone is killed, that you can and will be prosecuted for murder under a second-degree murder, reckless disregard for human life theory. And that happens, sadly, quite often. We have probably 15 Watson murder cases right now pending in Fresno that have happened over the last 2 or 3 years, where we've had people who have had previous convictions for DUI, and they go out and they drink and drive again. So they are then prosecuted the second time that they are involved in a DUI collision that then in turn causes death. They are prosecuted for murder under that theory. So the range of consequences for DUI is vast, depending on the facts.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, the next question is from Carmen Coolrus from the Fresno Bee, and this is for DA Smitkamp. Can you share a few statistics for recent DUI increases in Fresno County this year or over the past few years?
Yes, I can provide those to you in writing, Carmen. I was actually trying to put them in the chat. In Fresno County, we have seen a significant increase in repeat felony DUIs. In 2019, we had 77 people who were repeat offenders. In 2020, we had 124, and in 2021, we had 125. So those numbers are staggering. And with regard to the felony DUI manslaughter cases, in 2019, we had 247, which is an extremely high number also. In 2020, there were 282. And this year, thus far, in 2021, year to date, we've had 274. So we've seen that rise and that increase over the last 2 years. And I will agree with the other district attorneys who have spoken about the effects of COVID. You know, this has been a very stressful time for everybody. Alcohol sales have gone up, alcohol consumption has gone up. And even though in many counties throughout the state, some of the bars and restaurants for significant periods during 2020 were shut down, there was a lot of people who were continuing to drink in their homes. And alcohol sales have just been through the roof. So again, it is really important for us to do exactly what DA Stephan said, is be your brother and sister's keeper. Remind people, talk about it. It's just like any other thing that is plaguing our society. We have to communicate, educate, and be aware, and not be afraid to step up and say, hey, you've had enough to drink. Let me drive you home, or just make sure that people are acting responsibly. Because the first thing to be affected by alcohol when a human being consumes alcohol is our judgment. And it doesn't matter if you're young or old, man or woman, you know, whether you drink once a week or you drink once a year. You are always affected and impaired by alcohol the minute that it goes into your body. And you know, people who say, oh, I'm a better driver drunk, you know, they're just not telling the truth. And they kind of blow it off and make a joke about it. But really, it is a very serious issue that's completely avoidable. So we hope that everybody will just take some time this holiday season to keep themselves and others safe and responsible.
Okay. And again, from Channel 13 in Sacramento, how is the trend of charging some DUI drivers with murder working? And how much of a deterrent is it? And have these prosecutions been successful?
Well, I think, you know, as DA Smitkamp said, you know, this theory of murder liability, what we call a Watson murder, has been around for many, many years. And it's used in rare cases. But when somebody has knowledge that I mean, listen, we all learn this in high school, that it's danger to drink and drive. We teach this in schools everywhere across this country. And when somebody picks up a DUI and they're told by a judge, you know, drinking and driving is dangerous, and if you choose to do it again and kill someone, you can be prosecuted for murder. And that's what we do in those rare instances. I'm harking back, and Mr. Geyer can recall this, but, you know, a Rockland police officer was killed, Matthew Redding, by a repeat drunk driver. And that person had been told at the bar, you're too drunk to drive, do not drive. And he chose to do it. And now, you know, he suffered the consequences. You know, let's not forget, and I'm just going to go back to Rhonda. It's been 41 years since her sister died, and it's right there in her heart. And we all need to understand, we can say the statistics on how many people we charge, but we can never forget that they're human beings that will never be back to share this holiday season with their families. So, you know, when we talk about prosecuting for murder, that we do not take that lightly. It is a rare instance, but it is a tool that we have and we will use when it's necessary.
And if I can add to that, Summer Stephan from San Diego County, we have charged murder. It's not, I wouldn't say it's uncommon, but you do need those special, as Anne-Marie Schubert mentioned, those special things, you know, special knowledge, something that gives you that knowledge, that conscious disregard for life. But jurors have been convicting of second-degree murder. I think jurors understand the devastation and they are convicting. All of these things, though, as has been said, come after the damage is done. Kind of, it's the cleanup aisle. And it's important and consequences are important, but the real win for all of us is to prevent that loss in the first place. Because, you know, life goes on, but it does not go on for victims' families.
Okay. Well, that ends the press conference. I don't see any more questions being chatted in. So thank you everybody for our presenters, our elected DAs, and Rhonda from MAD. Any follow-ups from media can contact me or your offices in those jurisdictions. This is Shelley Orio from Sacramento County. Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody.
So much.
Thank you
Happy
so much.
holidays.
Thank you.
Thank you.